Morning, morning. Grab your drink, grab a seat. We are back. Thanks for joining us. It's so good to be here. I don't know if you anybody watch any of those sort of like crime, sort of legal TV shows, you know? And you know when the lawyer comes in and they ask that question, that really, really good question, and they sort of like can't get away from it. You know, you might remember in Legally Blonde, if you've ever seen Legally Blonde. My girls have watched it a bajillion times. Anyway, I'm going to give away the plot now. This is awful. If you've never seen it, spoiler alert. So she asked this girl, you know, so she's talking about how she came out of the shower and everything. And she's like, you know, I came out of the shower. You might remember the story. I came out of the shower and then I saw, you know, he was there. And that's where the murderer was. I saw the murderer, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, so the solicitor asks her, she goes, yes, but you just had a perm, didn't you? Yeah, of course I had a perm. I've had a perm. You know, and how many years have you had a perm? Oh, I've had a perm all my life, and ever since I was like 13 or something, I've been getting perms. That's funny, because you would know that if you have a perm, the first thing you do is you don't go home and take a shower after you've had a perm, right? So why did you take a shower after you've had a perm if your hair is still curly, essentially? And the question is such a good question. It obviously proves that the lady was lying, and she was in on it, and it was her boyfriend, you know, that shot, you know, her dad and everything like that. So big spoiler alert, I'm sorry. So you don't even need to see Legally Blonde. Anyway, so, you know, they ask these questions, these really, really good questions that kind of like just get under your skin. And politicians do it, journalists do it, solicitors do it, lawyers do it. And when we read the biographies of the life of Jesus, there's 4 biographies. 3 of them are first-hand eyewitness accounts. They were there writing about the stuff that they saw when they were there. And that's Matthew, Mark, and John. And then Luke is another eyewitness account. He wasn't there in the same way. He was more like a researcher, and he investigated it. But in those 4 biographies, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they write about the life of Jesus, and they write about loads of times when Jesus was asked some really good questions. And 3 of them record one of these questions, which is probably the best question ever. In fact, if you're not a follower of Jesus, this would be a really good question for you to ask. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, I've kind of wondered this myself before. And it happens, one we're going to look at is in the book of Mark, and Mark records it. He's straight to the point, so we're going to go straight to the point today with Mark. And the way Mark writes, and Mark says, this person comes up to Jesus, and asks him this question, and it's like, what is the greatest commandment? Which actually, if you think about it, that is a darn good question. I mean, it's a brilliant question, isn't it? Okay, what's the most important thing? Okay, what's the greatest commandment? Like, is it the dietary rules? Is it the moral living, ethical rules? Is it the social rules? Is it the agricultural rules? Is it the circumcision rules? Please say no. You know, what's the most important rule? What's the most single most important command? Because remember, they grew up in an environment, and all religion does this to you. You might know this because this is the way you grew up. Religion throws on loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of rules. Lots of rules. Lots and lots and lots of rules. And they were growing up in an environment where they had lots and lots and lots and lots of rules that they had to keep. And the better you kept them, the better you were. That's what religion does. It makes you think it's all about those types of things. So he wants to know, what is the greatest commandment? That's a good question. Brilliant question, isn't it? So Jesus begins to answer them, and he says this, the most important one, he starts, and he says this, he says, "Hear, O Israel." Now, as soon as he said those 3 words, "Hear, O Israel," it reminds them of something called a Shema, which is like a Jewish prayer. It's something that has been in their culture. Moses written about it 2,000 years beforehand, and they know exactly what he's going to say. You know, it's just like if you were to... if I was to say, when I grew up, and it said, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which da-da-da-da-da-da-da." You know it because you're taught it from a young age. You know, we stood like this in school, you know, from 3-year-olds. And anyway, and this is what it's like for them. As soon as Jesus says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God," it goes and then it says, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength." They knew it. People in the crowd are sitting there thinking, yeah, I thought that was going to be the one that he'd pick. I thought that would be Yeah, of course. That would be it. That would be the number one. Of course, that's the right command. That's a great answer, Jesus. Great question, great answer. But Jesus does this thing which he does all the time. When you read the biographies, he did what was totally unexpected, and he kept going. He basically said, well, and also, and alongside with, and so on with, and that was totally unexpected for people. It was not what they thought he was going to do, and he said this. The other one is this: love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. There's no greater commandment than these. Now, there's a little thing we have to be aware of. Of course, this is written in, this was in a language that we don't really speak anymore, because it was a couple thousand years ago. So when we translate this exchange into English, it's very easy in our minds to think that Jesus said, do this one. Oh, and by the way, also do this one. Or do this, but don't forget about this. But in the Greek, the way it's written, the actual language that we've translated from the Greek into English for us to be able to understand it, because nobody here speaks ancient Greek, I don't think. Maybe some of you are scholars, and I don't know. Anyway, so it's translated from the Greek into the English. And in the Greek, here's how it goes. It says, alongside this also, or and also. Okay, think of it like this. If you were going to make a cup of coffee, black coffee, Americano, and you asked me what ingredients you need to make the one coffee, if I told you coffee grounds, that's not the only thing you need, is it? It's coffee grounds and water. 2 ingredients for one thing. Right? 2 ingredients for one thing. You can't have an Americano if I just give you coffee grounds. You need coffee grounds and water. Jesus is saying, this is how it works. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. And the other ingredient you need is loving others as yourself. It's 2 ingredients for one thing. 2 ingredients for one thing. It's not that this is more important. Love God and love others is less important. It's not a hierarchy. He doesn't give it it's not a scale. Just like coffee and hot water, they're both equally needed to make a nice, strong black Americano. You need both ingredients to come out with a nice, strong black Americano. It's the same thing. Jesus is saying the greatest commandment is love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and then add to it. Make sure you do alongside this, along with, and part of this, love your neighbor as yourself. These 2 things are the one thing. This is what Jesus is saying. And that was totally unexpected. That's not what they thought he was going to say. And it's very clear that that's what he meant, because you can see it there. There's no greater commandment, singular, than these, plural. So this is the commandment. There's no greater commandment, singular. This is the commandment. You got to love God with everything you've got, and you got to love others. Those 2 things are the single greatest commandment. See, what Jesus did all of a sudden by saying those 2 things, he made it personal and he made it public. It's impossible. See, you could kind of go through your motions quietly on the side and live in such a way that you are loving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. You could do that by yourself. You could do that maybe in a cave somewhere. You could do everything to just love God. I wake up this morning and I think about how much I love God, and, thank you for this day and thank you for everything. But when he adds into the ingredient that you have to love others as well, then it becomes really annoying, because no longer is it private, it's now public. And it's personal, because if we have to love other people, they are so annoying. They are. Come on, think of your family members, think of your siblings, think of your children, think of your spouses, think of your school teachers, think of your colleagues, think of the people in your class, think of people you work with, think of people you have to work with. People are just darn annoying. So why can't I just be a Christian in private? Why can't I just keep it here? And you all of a sudden are saying to me that I have to love others as well, and that the two go hand in hand, and they can't be separated. It's like breathing. You can't breathe unless you inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. You want to love God, you have to love others. You can't separate the two. It's like breathing. It's the very thing. All of a sudden, Jesus made it so personal, and he made it so public. You just like, it gets into you, and it affects you. It affects the way you live. It affects everything. And he elevated. I mean, just think about this for a moment. All of a sudden, when you live in a religious environment, maybe you understand this. You grew up in an environment like this, where loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength is just sort of given this, this, I'll put on a pillar. It's so important. And then the way you treat others kind of is less important, because it's all about how you do things for God, how you perform for God. And somehow in this one exchange, Jesus has elevated the way you treat others to being just as important as the way you treat God. That's heavy. The way you treat others being just as important as the way you treat God. That's crazy. It's personal and it's public. Jesus has elevated it. He's elevated it. And the thing is, you don't get anything for it. He's not saying, somehow love others and earn more bonus points or something like that. He's not saying, love God and love others and get yourself a little shiny sticker that says, hey, I loved somebody today. Well done, you. He's not saying that you do this in order to earn any favor from me or earn any brownie points or earn any kudos. You don't get a bonus point. Yeah. There's no longer we're not trying to earn our way anymore. And it's helpful for us to remember, for everyone who serves, we're so grateful for everybody who serves, because when we serve as a local church and a community and get stuck in, that's incredible. That's what makes local church happen, because we work together, and that's incredible. So thank you for everyone who serves. But I got to tell you, you don't get a sticker for serving. God doesn't love you more for serving. I know, he's like, oh, darn it, I'm quitting today. This is it, I'm off. Yeah, you don't get a better seat in heaven. You don't get more God doesn't love you more or think you're doing better just because you do anything. Okay, we don't serve on teams or give money or care for others or make a meal for somebody who's not well or just had a baby or whatever. We don't do those things to earn anything with God anymore. God's saying you do those things because you love me, you love others. 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 You don't do those things to get more, in your spiritual bank account to make yourself look better, feel better about yourself. It's not even part of the equation. You see, that's the old way of doing things. See, the old way of doing things was you obey or perform in order to gain or get from God. That's the old way. The old way is you try to perform and obey and behave in such a way that you think you'll get better favor from God. That's the old way. We want to get something from God, so we do certain things in certain ways. That's all religions in the world, actually. That's not just Christian religion. All religions in the world have a basic fundamental practice that if I do things in certain ways, my God or gods will do things for me. Therefore, I make a little sacrifice. I put some fruit out. I do certain things at certain times of the year. I remember this. I light this candle. I do this certain thing. So religion thinks if we do certain things in certain ways, then our God, whatever it is for you or for culture, whatever your God is, will then think better of you. And that's the old way of doing things. And Jesus is saying you don't do things to get from God, we obey because of what we've already been given. That's the new way. The new way is all about we love God now because of what God has given us. We don't love in order to get. We love because we've been loved. We love because he first loved us. We don't love We don't do these things, we don't love God and love others to somehow perform and get love from God. No. That's the old way of thinking. The new way is we love God and love others just because he's loved us first. I don't have to do any of these things to get anything from God. I do it because of what he's already given me. He's given me love, so therefore I can love others. Another sort of thing is the old way is you love for your sake. And maybe you've been in a relationship where someone treated you that way. Maybe you had an experience in life where really, they say they love you, and they use that word basically to get something from you. They use this word love as if that somehow makes you feel obligated or complicit to behave or do things in certain ways. There's someone arrested in Romania at the moment. We've got two brothers, Andrew and Tristan Tate, of course, who are arrested at the moment. And if you read on his website, he published some things saying, here's my strategy for life. Make the girl think that she loves you until the point that she'll be willing to do anything for you. And a now deleted post off of his website. So the world works in a way that love is something that we use for our sake. That's the old way. Do it for our sake. I do things in certain ways for what my God will give me or what I will get out of it. That's the old way, for your sake. The new way is we love for others because of what they will get out of it. I love someone else because of what they will get out of it. I don't love you because of what I'm going to get from it. I love you because I know it'll do you good. I love you because, man, Jesus loved me first. All I can do is love you. I can just love you in return. I don't have to love you to try to get anything from you. I just love you because, man, this love that God's given me is so good, and it's for others. It's not to be kept. Jesus said to his own followers, he said, love one another in the same way that I have loved you. Love one another in the same way that I have loved you. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, when they see the love that you have for one another. When they see the love that you have one another. See, who's it for? We don't love for our sake. We love for their sake. We love for their sake. How will everyone know? How will they understand? How will they perceive? How will they discover? How will they even know that Jesus is real? Because of us loving them in a way that's not like the world. That doesn't say, I love you more because you're more attractive. I love you more because you're actually more youthful. I love you more because you've got more money. I love you more because you've got a really cool car. I love you more because, hey, if you join our church, you're going to give us lots of money. Hey, oh, wow, you're just so good at certain things. I'm going to love you because I hope that you're going to, reciprocate and maybe do something for us. That's rubbish. That's disgusting. The world will know that we are genuine in our love based on the way that we love one another. And we don't love the way the world loves to get something out of it for ourselves or to think that by doing it, it makes us look better. No, that's the old way of doing things. That's called religion. It doesn't work that way anymore. We love because we have first been loved. And when we love well, that is when people can discover what Jesus is really like. And in just a moment, we're going to have a story, a personal story. I'm really excited about this. So Debbie's going to come up in just a moment and share. Because it's personal and it's public. See, this isn't a concept. This isn't an idea. This isn't just some sort of philosophy. Jesus made it personal and he made it public. And our love for others is what is supposed to show what his love is really like. So if you'd welcome Debbie. Debbie, if you come forward, please, and share. Woo. Don't fall.
Last year, God encouraged me to say a few words about family and love, but I chose to ignore him. Maybe it wasn't the right time. And then last week I had another prompting, especially after we'd started our first series on resolutions and choices. And then last Sunday I had an email about love. So I want to put this all into perspective for you. In February 2020, my father died suddenly. Not that I had any sort of relationship with him, but he did leave me a letter telling me basically I was useless. And some of the things that I'd done in my past, he would never forgive me. He, I think, died hating me, but I won't know that. And then also that month, I lost a very good friend of mine to cancer. And then, to top the lot, we went into mega lockdown with COVID, which was difficult for lots of us, but thankfully I was working and I was classed as a key worker. I worked and I came home, I walked the dog, and I never spoke to another person until I went back to work, which was maybe the next day or 3 days later, depending on how the rota was set up. And then towards the end of 2020, things eased. And in November that year, I was offered my forever home, living in the over 60s retirement complex. And then, lockdown 2 happened. Then that Christmas, Mum was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And she was admitted into a Watford hospital where she could have no visitors. And she was completely and utterly alone. But once she came home, I went over to her as much as I possibly could. But she was a vulnerable woman, so I had to be really careful. And things then changed at work. And I suddenly went from working 3 mornings a week and 16 hours to working 36 hours, 5 or 6 mornings a week. And then in January 2022, Mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer with only weeks to live. And I changed my hours to finishing at 10 o'clock. And I drove over to see her for a few hours each day and also given my brother some respite. But sadly, she passed away in February and her funeral was early in March. But I thank God for my church family, as they didn't let me go to her funeral by myself. I was supported by people who choose, out of love, to stand and support me in what was a very difficult time. Otherwise, for me, it would have felt that I was going there by myself, unloved, and walking into the lion's den. But I was supported and loved by my church family. No one from my immediate family spoke to me, and I didn't even know where my mum's wake was. And so we came home. I was feeling, on one hand, unloved, but on the other hand, really loved. Later that month, I had a really nasty, hateful letter from one of my brothers. It was full of hate and anger and lies. And after that Sunday's morning service, I let Joel read the letter. And his face was shocked at the toxic words. And he asked several people to gather around me to pray, and there was no questions asked, but out of love and being family, they did. And I never actually thanked you all for it, so thanks for that. Then in April, I had to have my beloved Maisie, which is my dog, put to sleep. And on Sunday of that week, one of the worship songs with the words, "Take it all." And the tears just rolled down my face, and I thought, you didn't have to take my dog as well, God. Stuff was happening at work, which was really beginning to get me down. And it was getting to the point of not wanting to go and having physical pains, and I was beginning to have really dark thoughts. But this time I reached out to a wise friend. In August, I had the opportunity to retire, having back in the day taken out a pension plan, so I thank God for that, forward planning. I'm now retired and at peace and happy once again. But my point to this is, without my church family, I don't know where I would be. I would probably be at the bottom of a bottle or dead. But my church family choose to love me, like me, talk to me. It's a choice and not a chore, I hope. My choice was to follow Jesus. My reward is having a family. Because after all, family is not about blood. It's the people who choose to love you and stand by you when it all hits the fan. So from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you.
Jesus made it personal and public. If we only follow Jesus because it makes us feel good, or it's this nice philosophy, this nice idea, this nice sort of, we think it's not a philosophy. It's actually personal and it's public. It gets into you and it changes the way you live and it changes the way you love. It must change the way we treat one another. And the way we treat one another has been elevated to being just as important in God's eyes as the way we treat him. It's so, so important, the way we love others. And thank you so much for being so vulnerable to stand in front of people and just pour your heart out like that. So I want to honor you and say thank you. Our lives are richer because of you. So thank you. Very rich because of you. Our calling is to love Jesus and love people. My calling is not to lead a church, although I do. My calling is not to be a husband, although I am. My calling is not to be a father, although I am. My calling is to love God with everything I've got and love others with everything I've got. That's my calling. That's your calling. You can do that in whatever environment you find yourself, whether you're employed or unemployed, whether you're in college or in the workforce, whether you're single, divorced, married, widowed, whatever. Whether you're male, female, younger, older, doesn't matter about your bank balance, doesn't matter about your life experience, it doesn't matter. Your calling is to love God with everything you've got and to love others with everything you've got. Whatever environment you find yourself in, how liberating is that? You're free. You're free. You don't have to perform. You don't have to earn God's love. You don't have to earn salvation. You don't have to do these things because of what we're going to get out of it. You're totally free to love God and love others with everything. That's our main calling, the soul calling, the main purpose, our function. And God loves all people, which is crazy and totally a challenge because it's hard to love all people. Isn't it, right? It's hard to love all people, let's be honest. And as a parent, I can understand this more helpfully because there's things that my children do that I think, oh, that's really not the best for your life, but they do it anyway, and I still love them. There's things that I do that my spouse, Beth, is like, oh my gosh, what an idiot. But I know that she still loves me, even though I do stupid things. And we can understand it on that level. You're kind of, because well, you're married to them, so you have to do it, and they're your kids, so you kind of have to do it. But it also means no matter what their behavior, I have to still choose to love them. And that's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. It's very hard when we live up in a world such as ours, which thinks love means basically let me love whoever I want, live however I want. It's tricky when love is used in an environment where we use it to just mean, well, God is love, so really God shouldn't say anything about my life. And maybe you have conversations like that. It's tricky culturally, isn't it? Maybe, isn't it? So where do we get advice from? Where do we get help from? Where do we get strength from? Because it's easy to love the ones who are like us. It's easy to love the ones who have the same taste in music or the same social circles or the same sort of moral framework or the same voting persuasions or the same lifestyles. It's easy to love those kind of people. They're easier to love. Let's be honest. That's easier to love. So how am I going to do this thing that Jesus is calling us to do? Because just because God loved everyone doesn't mean he endorsed every absolute behavior. Now that's tricky for us to figure out and wrestle with, and it's something we have to work through. But when I look at the biographies of Jesus, and when I look at those 4 books, I discover that the majority of people that Jesus hung out with were nothing like him. They didn't believe the same or behave the same. And that's the kind of people he hung out with most of the time. The majority of people that Jesus hung out with didn't believe the same as him or behave the same as him. In fact, some of the people were downright totally opposed to the stuff that he was part of. And either the good news for Jesus is good news for all or it's good news for nobody, right? Jesus makes it personal and public, which means we have to learn to love people even though we don't agree with their behavior or their choices. Because just because you love someone doesn't mean that you 100% fully agree with their behavior or their choices. It doesn't mean you have to fully agree with their behavior or their choices. But we still have to love them. The annoying people, the messy people, the get on our nerves people. You know, teenagers who wear hoodies or people that have too many piercings or too many tattoos. I mean, I don't know what it is for you. Like, what category do you sort of put people in that are maybe harder for you to love? You know, the older people who are a bit slower in the supermarket, and all you want to do is just get in there, grab some broccoli and grab a loaf of bread and get out. But my gosh, it's taking for ages. You know, like, Yes, we have to love those people that are slow in the supermarket. And yes, we have to love those children who make too much noise when we're supposed to be trying to do something quiet, like at a show or a cinema or in a restaurant or whatever. And yes, we love our children when they have tantrums. And yes, we love one another when we have tantrums. Yes, we have to love the arrogant people who think they know everything about life. Yes, we have to love the anxious people. Yes, we have to love people who are struggling with life itself. Yes, we have to love those people. We have to love all people. We have to love people no matter what their political persuasion is, no matter how they voted for Brexit or what they thought about COVID restrictions. Like, we have to love people. We have to love people no matter what their gender identity is, no matter what their persuasion is, no matter what their sexual identity is. Because all of those things are just descriptions of behaviors. The ultimate human question is, you are important and you value, and God thought you were worth giving his very son for, to give his life for. And that had nothing to do with who you voted for, where you put your money, what kind of car you have, who you've been sleeping with. It's got nothing to do with any of those things. What it has to do with is the fact that God thought you were so worth giving his life for that he put his life on the line to see you transformed. And now, whether or not we accept that love and let it change us is up to you. But the human question is, you value and you are important, and there's nothing you can do to change the fact that you are important and you value and God loves you so much. In fact, he loves you so much that he's told the followers of Jesus that treat others the way they treat him to be the same. He's made it that important. That's how important you are. That the followers of Jesus, we love God with everything we've got, and we have to love others with everything we've got. He's made the two the same importance. Do we get it? It's so important. It's so important. If you love me, you love others. It's what it boils down to. And with this month, we've been looking at love and wrestling with some love. And this is a big idea. I know it's big stuff for us to wrestle with, but it's personal and public. It's personal because it's going to get under your skin. It's going to be personal because it has to challenge you when you bump up to people that you don't really like or don't agree with. We still have to learn to love them. We still have to. We have to. And it's so tough and it's so difficult. Guess what? We don't have to do it on our own. Because it's impossible on our own. I struggle to love people that don't have certain frameworks that I think are appropriate. But I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to do it on my own. Because the love that I've been given is the love that I can share. John wrote in 1 John, he wrote this, he says, we love one another. Yeah? Let us love one another because love comes from, do you know the rest of the verse? Love comes from God. Love one another, for love comes from God. You don't have to do it in your own strength. You don't have to do it in your own. Your tank might be empty. That's all right. His is so full, and it never runs out. I don't have the energy, the ability to love you right now. That's okay. I don't have to do it in my own strength. I want to tap into the love of God because the love of God is bigger and wider and deeper and wider than anything I can ever imagine. It's huge. So you don't have to do it on your own. It's freeing. This is actually liberating. Religion turns us into a rule that crushes you. That's the old way. The new way is this is actually life-giving. This is liberating. This is so freeing. You get to love others, and you don't have to stir it up yourself. You can love others because we love because God loved us. We love because love comes from God. And you don't have to pass a test. You don't have to pass an eligibility. You want to know what the eligibility criteria are? Have you got a heart? Have you got a mind? Have you got a soul? Have you got strength? You're in. Pass the test. Have you got a heart? Have you got a mind? Have you got soul? Have you got strength? Love the Lord your God with your intellectual abilities, or make sure you have enough bank balances, or make sure that you do certain things. No. Have you got a heart? Everybody here's got a heart. Have you got a mind? Yes, you do, because you're thinking about it right now. Have you got strength? Yes, because you're sitting up in your chair. Have you got a soul? Yes, because you're feeling things and things stir you. You pass the test. We all qualify. Hey, we qualify to be representatives of Jesus. Heart, soul, mind, and strength. I've got all it takes. I've got all that's needed. I've got it. I don't need to worry about it. I've got all those bits. We're in. Okay? We're in. All I have to do is love God with everything I've got. The way I'm wired, the way I'm made, the way I'm designed, you know. Some of us are more creative. Some of us are more intellectual. Some of us are more academic. It doesn't matter. I just love God the way I am. Some of us are get stuck in and do stuff. Cool. Go for it. Some of us are jokers. Some of us are serious. Love God. You're in. Heart, soul, mind, and strength. You can do it. That's all you need. Love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. And while you're at it, remember that it's personal and public, and you have to love others the same way. Go for it. We've got all that we need. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it's hard to work out, especially in our culture today. How do we work it out? It's tough. We got to work it out. We got to figure it out. It's not easy. It's not easy when family members treat you the way we heard about. It's not easy. It's so hard. Loving others is so hard. But you don't have to do it on your own, and you don't have to pass a test. Isn't that pretty cool? I think that's cool. I think it's totally liberating. So, let's do it. What are we waiting for? Let's do it. You're going to have an opportunity to do it. Actually, in 30 seconds, because we're finished in 30 seconds, and you get to say hello to people and say hi to people and have a drink and chat and everything, and maybe you got to go collect your kids, which you've been thinking, I'm so glad they've not been here for the last hour and a bit, but you get to go collect them, and you get to go sit down and have lunch together with your family or whatever, or I don't know what you've got going on, but you are going to be able to put this into practice straight away, you know, cool. So, let's do it, let's go for it, and let's be the church that is the type of church, when people look at us, they think, wow, I would love for somebody to treat me that way. I would love to be part of something where people loved me that way. With all my junk and all my flaws and all my mistakes and all my stupid choices, I would love to be part of a place that makes me know what the love of God is like, because that's what Jesus said his plan was. This is how everybody will know, discover, perceive, and understand what the love of God is when they see the way you love one another. Amen. Let's do it. Next week, we're going to carry on talking about love. James is wrapping up the final week on love, so looking forward to that. But now we get to go put it into practice. Have an awesome rest of the day. You don't need to collect your children until 12 o'clock, so you got another 15 minutes to enjoy a nice drink, a nice coffee or whatever. Say hello to somebody, and let's do it. Amen.